Okay, so let's if we set our intention, right? Because we have intentions, one of the five always present mental factors anyway. So even when we're in a sleep, in a coma, we always, and when we're dying, intention is one of the mental factors that's always there. It does become more subtle, of course. But so then just set an intention anyway, because it's interesting if we were to reflect on our state of mind for the last hour or so, there was an intention coming here, but we probably maybe didn't know it. So if we make it more visible, then what we want to think is, whatever we do here, that we should learn something, to learn something. And the learning, of course, here is learning that it's somehow beneficial for others as well as ourselves. So I really feel very satisfied when if we finish a class and then people have something that they've learned that helps them improve their lives. Well, mental lives, I guess, mental reality. Okay. So just sit for a moment and think about what that kind of motivation that would be for you. And the motivation often is the motivation to attain the awakened mind, fully awakened mind for the benefit of helping others. Okay. It's not so easy to help people, is it? It's hard enough to help ourselves. Um, and also it goes back to, I think, earlier class when we look at defining what help means. So, it's a very good topic, the topic of what help means. And I think generally speaking well, not even, I mean, definitely in our culture and by most cultures, help would mean somehow have an impact on the external environment of something external. So help might be, yeah. I mean, it could be internal, helping someone be healthy, for example, helping someone, uh, you know, take care of their health, take care of their nutrition, things like that. But that's our default mode, isn't it? And when we really think about helping, and as you know, because everyone here has studied these ideas for a while, but we always default to the idea of helpful as being something external. And even amongst the foundation for the preservation Mahayana tradition, you know, if you look at the plethora of projects, you know, in the past to fairly recently, we were criticized for not doing enough social interaction, social action, not doing enough, and I'm not excusing it, but not doing enough social and I don't know, you know, helping the poor, helping homelessness, helping things like that. And we should do those things. It's not like a should or shouldn't, right? But when people would come up with the question is why aren't we doing more social work and social interaction? We have to remember where the motivation, probably the intention came from. Is it still hooked with the idea that help is something that we do externally? And it is a little tricky to explain to people how that can be helpful, but it's not what we mean by help, right? It's not that you ignore the needs of others. I don't mean like that. It's like there's a saying, if you meet a beggar on the road, give him food, don't teach philosophy, right? So I don't want people if they hear what I'm saying to misunderstand that I'm ignoring or discounting being compassionate and helping to people's physical needs for wherever they're at. So as someone who's trying to develop our awakening mind, of course, we start where people are at. We help people where they're at. We don't proselytize. Um, only if people really it's like if someone asks us about the philosophy or the religion or the ideas or the practices, of course. But to go around proselytizing, it's not necessarily, well, proselytizing may be too strong a word, but to give advice where it's not being asked sometimes typically is not that helpful. And if you train in the mental health field, or you train as a therapist, then one of the things you learn they tell you right away is, don't give advice, which I don't agree with, by the way. But the way it works is that you have to have permission to give advice. Do you know what I mean? Just because someone comes into your office doesn't mean they're giving you permission to give them advice, really. I mean, if you ask them, they say yes, but really in their minds, they're more often people want to just be heard, you know? And also sometimes when we give advice, it's very sort of very, I don't know, fundamentalist kind of. It sounds very religious, right? They talk about spiritual bypassing, which I don't like that term because it's too general. But the fact is that if someone, comes and wants your help and you tell them, well, it's just your karma, right? Or, actually that person was your mother in a previous life. Those kinds of things, those are reframes. And reframing is something therapists do a lot. Another thing I don't completely agree with, it can help in certain contexts, but reframes tend to be the therapist, or in this case, us, helpers. Reframing is really our knowledge, not their knowledge. Now, sometimes people need education. Okay. But but if they're not asking for the education or they're not open to the education, don't tell them that's their karma. Don't do a reframe. I'm kind of telling you what to do. Sorry. It's really something something that something I think about. Okay. Something I
You're
think about.
reframing for us.
What's that?
You're reframing for
I
us.
am. I am reframing. But the reframes can be very disempowering to people, aren't they? When you really kind of step back, of course, sometimes they're helpful. But Buddhist philosophy and psychology and us Buddhist practitioners, we can get very caught up when people are struggling in just offering them a reframe, offering advice, offering philosophy. And it doesn't fit in terms of their reality, their way of making sense of the world. Okay? We shouldn't do that. I just don't believe that that's what we should do. Of course, if there's an openness to a different point of view, then of course that's what but we tend often not to wait to check if there's an openness to a different point of view. That makes sense? On the other hand, it's not meant to be like timid or lacking courage and just wanting people, just saying the nice thing to people that fits their, and that's not what I'm saying either. What I'm saying is what is helpful. Our goal, our focus, my focus, your focus is to really analyze, well, what's helpful? So now we have to think about, um, if we look at all the world religions and then also uh, different philosophies on benefiting other people, the idea of help has comes in a lot of different definitions, doesn't it? Just to give a really bad extreme, not bad, but an extreme example is for fundamentalist Christians. They believe help is to get you saved, and they won't let you close your door until you promise to be saved by Jesus and turn yourself over to God. By the way, I mean, I'm talking about in the way they present it, not the actual sense of Jesus and God, because actually turning ourselves over to Jesus and God would be a very, 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 very helpful thing. But the point is that a lot of us don't find that particularly helpful because, um, we're they don't have permission, right? In those kind of cases, if you don't have permission, then probably you're going to do more negative impact than positive. People will say, talk about how Michael's really, I don't know what's happened to him. He's become really, I don't know, I think he's joined a cult, that kind of thing, right? That's what happens. And we push, I don't know why we push too, right? Um, I think we get excited in the beginning and we love the ideas, right? And they're very profound and we see how helpful they are to us. So then we want to help out, share them with others. It's very common. Lama Yeshe used to talk a lot about this, how people would come to the November course in the early days, right? And then they go home and try to convert their parents. Bec- But the motivation in a way was kind of good is because they got so much value, right? You get so much value. Of course, then the parents begin to hate, Buddhism because look what it's done to my kid. It's made him or her, really uh what do you say, fundamentalist, closed-minded, following a cult, that sort of thing. So I want to I don't want to say one more thing about the point of my saying this, bringing this up, is the point is, are we courageous enough to commit to what we feel is helpful? That's the point. So I often tell the story of Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion, right? And in his first manifestation, first or earliest manifestation, Chenrezig had, I don't know if he had two arms or four arms, but it was let's say he had two arms. I think it was two arms. And he spent, I think it was 11 eons since he activated bodhicitta. He spent 11 eons um, working tirelessly to liberate sentient beings. And after 11 eons, we talked about how long an eon is. I don't know, someone can look it up. It's trillions of years. After, I think it's 14 trillion or 4 trillion. I don't know. I always look it up and I never remember it. I'm not good with numbers. So, um, there's small eons, medium eons, great eons, and there's countless great eons, which to me is an oxymoron, right? How can there be a countless great eon? It's countless. So, I mean, wouldn't a countless small eon be as long as a countless great eon? Just for the scientists among you. I mean, you can correct me if I got that wrong. Anyway, that's one of those. I love that in Buddhist thing. They give you these descriptions that are just too mind-boggling. Anyway, they say that an eon is the length of time it would take to fill a 3 mile wide, 3 mile long, and 3 mile deep uh, hole if you put one sesame seed in every 100 years. Then when you filled it, that'd be one eon. So if it was a countless eon, then I guess you could. Sorry. I really get, sorry. So after 11 eons, he decided, Chenrezig, well, maybe I'll just take a peek at how many sentient beings I've liberated. So he looked over his shoulder. I don't know, maybe kind of elaborated, but he looked over his shoulder and noticed that he had not liberated even one. Not one. And for a split second, he thought, what's the use? What's the use? I should have just not taken the bodhisattva vow and just taken the vow of individual liberation. And in that moment, his head split into 10 pieces. Because when he took the bodhisattva vow from his guru, was Amitabha, when he took the vow, he said, if I ever have even a moment of doubt, may my head split into 10 pieces. So of course, then he had regret, and Amitabha put him back together again, but this time with 10 heads, and Amitabha put his head on top in order to protect him and remind him that no matter how long it takes, the vow is to the end of time until all sentient beings are liberated. So for Chenrezig, you see, Chenrezig defined helping as liberating all living beings or liberating beings. So we have to think about what we are going to commit to in terms of helping. So, remember we talked in the first class what Rinpoche had told me. If you're just helping people feel better, there's really not much benefit. That's very hard to commit to. It doesn't mean we don't help people feel better, right? And I told you, I think, and forgive me when I repeat these things, 'cause I just tell the same stories over and over. But you know, he was telling me that as a therapist, but and he said, as a therapist, if you're just helping people feel better, there's really not much benefit. And of course, he was speaking to me, not all therapists, because well, he could say to all therapists, but they wouldn't hold the same impact. Um, because when in our, now all of you have heard, you can't unhear what you've heard. No matter how much you try, you can't unring that bell. And that's a curse. I call it the curse. It's it's better almost, and I don't mean this literally, but it's almost better not to hear the ideas. Because when we're struggling, right? When we're struggling, it's you and you know the answer, but the answer is too tough. It'd be better to just go out and drink, or go on a cruise, or as a remedy, right? And then you do it, and the problem is you try and you try, and it doesn't work anymore. And then you can try for years, but you know it doesn't work. And you come back to where you're at, and you have to deal with the shit, you know? So when Rinpoche said that, have to understand that I had already been practicing for many, many years. I had, the great fortune of living with Lama Yeshe and Rinpoche in Nepal for many years. And so it's almost like, you have a tool belt and you're not using all you're doing is, you know, I don't know what the metaphor would be, but you have this incredible tool belt and all you're doing is using a hammer, right? And you have all these power tools and stuff like that. And I think for me personally, it was a lack of courage because if I was to do the right thing with a person, they may leave the office, or in your case, all of our cases, they may leave feeling worse, right? If you do the right thing, the most helpful thing, doesn't mean that they feel good right then, would it? It doesn't necessarily, it's not a one-to-one, they're not parallel. And if we have the courage, that's amazing. And if you reflect on our great leaders, like His Holiness and Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and others, many, many, these high lamas, they don't just go around making people feel better, do they? No. I mean, with Lama Yeshe, I always felt worse. I did. I mean, I'm not, but, and sometimes I doubt it, of course. I doubt it. Um, I don't doubt any of it now, and I haven't doubted any of it for many, many decades. But when it's happening, I mean, you just see yourself running away, or I just saw myself running away. I said, I can't take this any longer. This is not good. This is not helpful. And so being helpful means keeping our eye on the goal. Okay. And being kind, of course. Of course, we have to be kind. Also, it's different when you have a teacher-student relationship, right? Teacher-student relationship then is you have more permission to be more direct, right? And that's the relationship. It depends how deep that relationship is, of course, with the teacher, but um, and also I'm not suggesting that just a teacher-student relationship means the teacher can be abusive, because sometimes it's abuse, and we have to be, in today's world, we have to be very discriminating. We have to, even when in olden days, in order to uh, be accepted as a disciple, particularly of a tantric lama, a tantric teacher, it took 12 years of the interview process between the teacher and the student, and the student and the teacher took 12 years. And you know what, I honestly believe that the same is happening now, even though it looks different. Because we can go to initiations and all these things, if they're all over the place, they're advertising, we've seen we can go to them. But I think honestly, because people here are all familiar with Buddhism, that I will kind of make a stand that just because we go to initiations and maybe we can go for a couple of years doesn't mean that the initiation happens or that there's a disciple, a teacher-disciple relationship. Once you're there and feel that you do get the blessing of initiation, something happens transformatively, right? So, when His Holiness gives Kala Chakra, there's tens of thousands of people there. I mean, I think they're there. I think we can be safe to say they're not receiving the initiation, most of the people, because it's not safe for them. Because once you take initiation from a teacher, a qualified teacher, that is, then everything changes for you. You take the tantric vows, and now that teacher is your guru. You cannot give him up or her up in this lifetime. You cannot. And we know there are stories, there are things that are happening, unfortunately, due to the times where people get, that some teachers who do give initiation and then turns out their behavior becomes very questionable. I can't say what their motivation is. Maybe they're Buddhas. I don't know. But I know many of my friends have had that experience. I fortunately have never had. Well, not real. Yeah, I shouldn't say never. There's one Lama. So you don't want to deal with that. You just don't want to deal with that. It is very painful. And but because so we're going to the highest level of help is the relationship between a tantric lama, qualified, and the qualified student. But my belief is that relationship, and maybe I'm just old-fashioned. My belief is that relationship of a tantric master and qualified student happens extremely rarely. And I believe that there will be a 12-year interview process or 6-year or 5-year. And it's not fixed at 12. There will be a time that they will examine you, and in a sense, you're examining them. Okay. I don't know why I got onto this. Anyone know why I did all this? Michael's shaking his head.
No, but it's good for us to know. Thank you, Karuna.
Okay. I mean, I'm only trying to say it as to be helpful. Unfortunately, these days, modern era, we have to be more discriminating. I think in the past, we didn't have to be so discriminating. You know? You know what I mean? I think it wasn't necessary. Okay. Denise, you don't have a question? Well, she not answer. I know you're on the road today. Not yet. Oh, good.
I'm here, thank you, but I'm moving.
I know. Okay. Oh, there's Sheil.
Hi, Karuna.
Hi.
I've been thinking about this for a really long time, and today I said I have to ask you because I just don't know. I just don't know. So listening to like how to use Buddhism in everyday life and other workshops I've been in, there's this
Mhm.
um, you know, there's so much talk about like being mindful what we do and mindfulness. And I really don't understand how am I supposed to be mindful in my everyday life? Like, what does that mean? Like,
Oh,
does
that's
it
yeah,
mean like
yeah.
for example, when I'm in the bus, um, I'm watching my thoughts and I'm checking my senses, like my feet, like I scan my body. Oh, I can feel my feet on the ground. My hands are holding on to something. Like I honestly don't know what that means and how to apply it to my everyday life. Thank
Do
you.
you want my critical answer or my nice answer?
I'd like you to tell me however you feel comfortable.
Uh, we asked Lama Zopa Rinpoche once what he thought about mindfulness. And his reply was mindfulness of what? Okay. So it's just getting because of our this modern culture of ours, mindfulness is just this catch-all. So what I'm trying to say is being mindful doesn't mean it's helpful. Okay. Snipers trained in the armed forces are very mindful, aren't they? In fact, I knew a sniper, it's sad to say, from Vietnam War. And he would go in. by himself into villages and assassinate, you know, certain people. You don't think he was mindful? I mean, he has hyper mindfulness, to every little sound and every little, he'd go up he'd usually go in these villages via some river because it would mask the sounds. So when I would like to encourage you to be mindful when you're so there's many things. All of the teachings we study have to do with mindfulness. But mindfulness is a state of mind. So when you're talking about being on the bus, it's kind of awareness, right? A sense of awareness. So that's good because usually we're unaware, but it's not really that. It's good because it helps us learn a little more about how distracted we are and where our mind is going. And so it's very important to do that. That is a meditation that we need to do. But more importantly, is to take one of the topics from your studies, maybe that morning. If you're familiar with the Lam Rim, for example, then that day be mindful of, or you just take the Four Noble Truths. I really sorry to sound like a kind of a downer here, but we are not actually familiar in an authentic way with the Four Noble Truths. And the first noble truth is suffering. So when we become aware of, unfortunately, our own path doesn't really get motivated until we have an appreciation of the nature of suffering. And then compassion can't arise either. So not only will we not practice without awareness of suffering, and so then we won't have compassion for others. So to be on the bus and start looking and taking some of the ideas around suffering, and I say this a little guardedly because I think most of the way people meditate on or think about the nature of suffering is a little bit too pedant or too what to say, too uh, it's kind of, someone help me here, like literal or
Doesn't consider the mental suffering they might be going through.
well, what I'm trying to say is what we do is we read about something, all these different teachings, we read about like the nature of suffering according to the First Noble Truth. We think the words are the thing. Okay. The reason the Buddha did not speak for 7 weeks after he attained enlightenment is because he felt people wouldn't understand the profundity of his experience through words. So my point is when you look at the words, that's not it. But you need the words as prompts. So when it says, for example, so you're on the bus or on the whatever, um, let's just say the first noble truth, and you talk about the 8 sufferings or the 6 sufferings or the 3 sufferings. It's really to spend your time on the bus becoming familiar with what that means for yourself and the people on the bus and really get it. You got to see it, not think it. You have to see it. It has to become non-conceptual. First, it starts as conceptual. Okay, so let's take one of the 8 sufferings, the suffering of aging. Okay, so you're sitting on the bus. Okay, what does that mean? Why is that a suffering? So all the suffering is designed, like Denise was pointing out to. So Shield, what the trick is that it's not the dying that's the suffering, actually. So we have birth, sickness, aging, and death. Sickness is not a suffering. Sickness is one of the 8 conditions that's very hard to not have the mind suffer. The mind suffers, not the body. So when you look at the 8 sufferings or the 6 sufferings or the 3 sufferings, it's you look at, I mean, you start breaking down actually when you start thinking about aging, the effects of aging. So one is, if you're young, then you don't really experience much about the suffering of aging, except you do because you don't feel the same as when you're 16 or 17 or 18, and then you're aging. But what the thing is powerful is when you look around you and look at the people Oh, it's real. And then you almost get like a heart attack or panic attack, because you're seeing, I was in the supermarket and looking, there's some old, sorry, it's not funny, but there was a very, seemed quite elderly woman pushing her cart. And then all of a sudden I hear her say, Mom, Mom, not that way, Mom. And then I also saw another more elderly woman. She must have been like in her 90s or something, pushing her cart happily along, by the way, going in the wrong direction and losing her daughter, right? It was must have been in her 70s or something like that. And I thought, well, the 90 something year old, she looked happy, but why that aging? Why is that suffering? You need to analyze. So because the suffering is the opposite of happiness. And the happiness is a mind that's awakening or has a level of consciousness. Okay. And everybody in this room has that to a level that maybe most of the people on the planet do not or have experienced it. And you're trying and we're trying to develop that, right? So maybe they've had a little glimpse of that, but they have no concept that they can better themselves. And then what happens? Where do they go? When you start seeing then the death comes, you start thinking, you know, I mean, I don't know, I'm not clairvoyant, but I look and I go, wow, that stream of consciousness just continues. And streams of consciousness continued into cats and dogs and into banana slugs, whatever his name is. I can't remember the banana slug's name. Is it Charlie? No. Charlie?
Jimmy.
Jimmy, right. So Jimmy's there, and Jimmy might have been the guy that cut you off in the supermarket, last year, right? Jimmy might be the guy that was sitting on the bus with you because a stream of so you look at, and by the way, this is kind of fantasy too until you're clairvoyant, but we got to still do it. There are you can make assumptions. You can make assumptions just as long as you know that your assumptions might not be right. So if you look at someone sitting on the bus and not doing anything, and it seems like they're just kind of going along in life, without much control. We're projecting, right? Of course, it's projecting until you can see into their minds. But we have to discriminate. We have to discern. And that's not such a big leap to see how that stream of consciousness goes from that person's personality, and its next personality might be Charlie, right? It's not a big leap. It's really not. And then you look at your stream of consciousness and how much you're trying and you're commit. I mean, I don't care how much someone's suffering right now. That doesn't matter as much. It's what you have in terms of your total makeup and your karmic imprints. So you might be really not well, but karmic imprints, you continue to make them. You continue to make positive imprints. Though those will ripen. Us sitting here right now is the ripening of our karmic imprints from before. We are in our next life right now, aren't we? We are in our next life from last life. And last life, we're all sitting around together and talking about our next life. And we say, I don't know, man. I don't even know if there is a next life. But I think I'll, circumambulate this stupa one more time. Or I think I'll give, food to these hungry people one more time, right? And we didn't think, someone said, oh, next life, you're going to be in this really wealthy country with, what did Guru Rinpoche say? Where horses run on wheels and iron birds fly. So he said, look at what we got now. I have to get my my plug. Forgive me. I'm probably wearing out my battery by talking so much. Anyway, okay, so Sheila, I hope that helps a little bit. There's a big, there's our topic, right? This is our whole talk. So let's keep me at task. But I want to share one thing with all of you for a minute. Okay. And I don't know. Let's see. Mm, 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 mm. Denise, are you able to see the screen? I lost Denise.
I can see it. There you go.
Able
Perfect.
to, but not choosing to currently.
Oh, can you see it? Choose to see it then. If you want, you don't have to.
I'm the driver, Karuna.
Oh, you're the driver. Is Reef with you? Is he?
Karuna said hi. Say hi, Karuna.
I want let Reef drive. I think Reef is, how old is he?
13.
13. I was going to say 12. Okay. Okay. So I wanted to share this. This is a teaching that Lama Yeshe gave many years ago, of course. And I just want to talk about the 6 factors that give rise to problems. Okay. Now, technically, the 6 factors that give rise to the afflictions. Okay. And so I just thought I'd go through this for a few minutes because I think it's a good way to think about how to practice in everyday life, for example. And let's see here. So the 6 factors that give rise to problems, and I would like to ask you to also, when we're going through this, is really kind of bring up a live problem for yourself, okay? And see how this works. And I got most people are off camera now. I hope I didn't lose everyone. Did I lose anybody? No. Okay. Um, okay. So, oops. So, the first one is I'll read through the 6. So, the karmic imprints, the object itself, influences from the outside, following false teachings, habit, and over-exaggeration. Okay. Um, so again, try and bring up something you're struggling with, something that causes you to get a bit, that causes you suffering or pain, difficulty. And the first thing for that affliction to arise, so we really need to reflect for a moment. I really want to ask you to really think of like the last time you got really angry and lost it, or you had just kind of feeling like a lot of desire for something, a lot of craving. Okay. Just see if you can think of an example. It'll make it. So, or someone you have a conflict with frequently, right? Um, or a work situation that challenges you. Okay. You got something? Everyone have something? Okay, good. So and this is where Western psychology and Western, so this I'm starting off with the one that really diverges from Western psychology and Western thought, okay? Because in now it doesn't totally diverge from it because what the first thing is when you have a conflict, because you have this conflict situation, right? Or attraction or whatever it is, but something that really brings up your disturbs your mind. Okay. And the funny thing is for us people attending to Buddhist thought, pleasure is also considered disturbs our mind, doesn't it? We're so familiar with pleasure being the thing that we seek for happiness. So a lot of times we don't distinguish between pleasure and happiness. So this is the fundamental cause of that affliction arising for you and me. Okay. The fundamental cause is the karmic imprint. On our consciousness is the imprint to have that delusion arise. If you don't have the imprint, You can't have it. Remember last week on the karma? If you don't have the seed, if you haven't created the cause, you can't experience the result. So, karmic imprints, it's amazing because this is really the psychological situation that Western science not yet there, Western psychology not yet there. The study in genetics is a sort of it is a it's sometimes like kind of an example of karma, but it's not really the same because the karmic imprints create the genetics. So people will say, well, I was born with that gene. It's not karma, it's my genes. But how were the genes created? What were the cause of the genes to be in that construction? Remember from last week. So karma is mental, so it's not something that's formed. Genes are formed, right? They're molecular, they're atomic, right? They're made up of atoms and molecules and all kinds of other formed things. Okay, right, Jessica? She wants to. Anything wrong yet? Okay, thank you. She's my science advisor. Um, so if you don't have the imprint, it's not so because okay, let's put it differently. From previous non-virtuous actions. Now, what is non-virtuous actions? We have to study that for some time. It's not in the context of this class, but non-virtuous actions and virtuous actions are simply actions that harm and actions that help. Okay, and there's neutral ones too. And if you want to be a little more subtle about it, you could say that actions that are disturbing to someone's mind are non-virtuous. Okay, particularly disturbing to your mind. So when we think of the 10 non-virtuous actions, right? Um, the three physical, killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. The reason they're non-virtuous is it's very hard to do those actions with a positive mind. Okay, so in and of themselves, killing in and of itself is not a bad thing. Okay. Um, Sexual misconduct in and of itself is not a bad thing. Stealing in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's just almost impossible to do those things with a positive mindset, a virtuous mind. A bodhisattva can, okay? A Buddha can, a bodhisattva can, but the rest of us, you know, we can't. Our minds aren't trained well enough. Well, we can, I mean, maybe we can do something, but probably not until the full realization, non-conceptual, direct experience of emptiness of inherent existence, then you can. There's no problem then. Okay. So these karmic imprints are motivated by ignorance. Okay. So when the motivated by ignorance and desire, hatred, or any other delusion. So, what you have is you have the affliction, you have the karmic imprint, and then you also have to have hatred or ignorance or desire, one of the deluded minds. And then when the conditions are right, boom. Okay, so when the condition is right means you come into, so another of the six conditions, you don't need all six of these, by the way, but these are six that are reflected upon. They're going to be some combination of these six. All of them have to have the karmic imprint, and all of them will have an object, right? So the object plus the imprint, then Lam Yesh is bang, delusion arising, then explosion. Then, you know, and the reason we act with, that we try to act with discipline and vows and precepts is in order to not come into the object if possible. That's why we sometimes say, you take vows and things. Purpose of vows is not to come in contact with certain objects that are difficult to handle. Rama often use the example of when you go shopping. Okay, you go shopping, it's really amazing. and talk about, okay, so Sheil, another thing is you can do is mindfulness. And when you go shopping, is watch this process of yours. So you go shopping, and what happens is there's a constant infinite imprints being made of the color and the shapes of the objects in this. Let's say you're in a supermarket, going down the aisle, the shapes, the color, the light. And your eye is taking, and your ear is taking it in too, right? But let's just take the the eye sense right now. So in order that imprint to arise, it has to come in contact with an object. And that could be a mental contact too, where you start thinking about someone or you're dreaming of something and you get angry in your dreams, right? Or you start fantasizing about somebody. So that's the mental sense acting. So and then the mind sinks. So let's say you're walking down the aisle and you say, "Oh man, maybe I should get some ice cream." Right? It just happens like that. So at that point, the mind sinks with attachment into the object itself. Right? They seem almost inseparable. Right? The object and the attachment and you all seem to be unified. Okay, merged. The next thing you know, you're at the checkout counter reaching into your pocket or your purse for your money before you even know what you're doing. And then you're walking out the store. That's because if there was no ice cream in that store or no karmic imprint, like a lot of people walk right by the ice cream, right? They don't have that imprint. Okay. And you can use this for all the levels, like being attractive to handsome or beautiful people, to being repulsed by other certain people, the person on the homeless person in the middle of the street, I don't know, I'm generalizing, right? Stereotyping. But I'm doing that so that you can see that every instance is an instant for mindfulness. And so mindfulness will watch this process. Karmic imprint is there, but then all of a sudden your senses come in contact with it. Okay. Then there's an explosion. Okay. And then also, and this will come up in a couple minutes, there's an exaggeration of the beauty of that object, of the ice cream. All right. And this huge exaggeration comes. So again, this is mindfulness. This is why you watch your mind. It doesn't matter so much scan. I mean, you can scan your body and the feelings. That's okay. That's good because you should become aware of that. But ultimately, you want to scan the mind and watch this process. But if you don't have this formula, by studying and reading, right, and listening to teachings, then you go onto the bus and you don't have the formula, and it's not so useful. But you take this formula with you, and it's very powerful. And then your world starts to transform, and then everything you do is Dharma practice. Okay. And the reason this realm that we live in, that would be the hell realms, the spirit realms, animal realms, the human realms, the asura, the anti-god or demigod realm, and some of the god, yeah, and not the god realms, the demigod, some of the demigod realms are called the desire realm because we are doing this every instant, unfortunately, sometimes strongly. Okay. Then outside influences, and this is like negative friends and negative or diluted information. You know, uh, what we watch on TV, what we read, what we check out on the internet, right? Okay, that's information can be so that information. So all of a sudden, you see a certain really extreme political ad, right? And then all of a sudden you get kind of pissed off because you go, that's just a total lie. Well, that's, if again, mindfulness if we're looking at our mind, we'll see that, oh, I just came into contact with negative information. Okay. And um, I'm very biased, so forgive me for my biases. But when I see something like Tucker Carlson or Steve Bannon and countless others, their thing is negative information, isn't it? I'm sorry if I'm generalizing, and I'm sorry if I offend people's political leanings, but that's what they do. They will admit it. And that poor people, Sandy Hook, with what's his name? InfoWars.
Alex Jones.
Alex Jones. You know, I mean, you think about that. You think about all the misinformation he was spreading, and it was not just misinformation, it was vile. And then because they have the karmic imprint, right? If they didn't have the karmic, I don't have that karmic imprint. I don't, I just don't listen to him. I mean, I not only don't listen to him, I know he's lying. But if you have the karmic imprint, then of course they're going to be influenced by that. Okay. And then it's difficult to maintain control because the situation is overpowering. Um, I was watching something the other night and talking about, I don't remember where it was, who went in and shot 43 people. Was it in a supermarket or something? And it killed 43 people. It was all because on the he had been listening to this propaganda about immigrants taking over the country. And and I have great compassion for this guy now that I know the context. Of course, when it happened, I just was, shocked and angry like anyone else. But what happened was he had been listening over and over and over again to this. And so because of the imprints in his mind and then the negative influence, right? He began to believe that was true. So this negative information, this also happens, you see on my fourth bullet, wrong teachers. Don't accept everything that people are saying. We got to stop doing this, and we have to help others not to do it. It's like the common thing, if someone's teaching it, it has to be okay. Doesn't. It happens in religion, right? It can happen in Buddhism, I'm sure. So these wrong teachers, we have to be very careful of them too. So these, in the sense of this poor guy who killed all these poor people, he had a wrong teacher, wrong influence, wrong content. So be careful. We can't just accept all content. We're not good enough. We are not good enough. At least I'm not. I mean, there's so much on TV, and I watch a bunch of crap also. But we do have to be we do have to be mindful, Sheil. Again, I'm going to use your word today. It's not the friends who we have to blame. They act as a catalyst. Okay, so don't blame people. Have compassion for them. But we need to be discriminating, knowing that curiosity can also create confusion. We have to be very careful when we go into these different. It's like when you often hear about undercover cops, and they're undercover for so long they begin to become like the criminals themselves. They lose touch with reality. Next one is following false teachings, which is kind of related. But the third factor, that one that I just was articulating, refers to one's general lifestyle and the environment. But here we're talking about actually becoming a follower of a teacher, okay, who's teaching wrong conceptions. Okay. Uh, interesting teachings are often just a craving for information. Then I remember Lama talked about, for example, he was so amazing. He brought bedtime stories for kids.
General lifestyle and environment.
Sorry, someone has their mic on. So bedtime stories. It's like uh, sometimes I've heard about parents who read these stories, like scary stories to kids, and like fairy tales. They're very scary for the most part, and they're built based on fear, right? I mean, we know now that all these fairy tales that were taught as common bedtime stories were actually narratives around the plague or around, different things. So though, and kids are, of course, much more impressionable. Um, so be careful about this. We have to analyze again what is useful, what is harmful. And again, the way one discriminates is the effect on the mind itself and the imprint that it's going to leave. So for a good high practitioner, they want to go into more negative situations, not less. Okay. But for us, we have to be discriminating. How much can we take? Is it going to have a negative imprint on us? That's why we have to be careful when I was talking in the very beginning about being too Dharma political, reframing people's experience. Say, oh, it's so good that, it's so, let's see what could be a good one. you know, it's so, I don't know. When I start thinking like this, all these terrible things come in my mind. I say, and I go, don't say that one. Don't say that one. It's so good that that guy dented your car because now your karma is purified and you can practice generosity and compassion. All of those are good, by the way. But if the person's not there to hear, they're not at that level to hear it and it's not helpful, don't say it. I mean, I don't think it's useful. If they're open, sure. Or little opening, definitely. And also sometimes people are not open, but they're doing such harmful things that then, yes, it can be good to be assertive, even if they can't agree with it. Who knows? The imprint might be good. And then there's habit. Okay, so these are 6 factors that raise delusions. You don't need all 6, but this is what's happening. We experienced something and it was good, and then we do it again and it feels good, or bad. And then the habit, so if it's bad, then we're developing a habit of aversion, right? So you see how this works. So over and over again, you're interacting with this negative or positive experience. Each time you're planting imprints on your consciousness. And so for those of you familiar with Sutrayana teachings on thought transformation, of going into difficult situations and embracing them, your enemy is your best friend kind of a thing. The reason for that is to change the habit. That's most of the reason. When we have a experience of emptiness, even conceptually, that eventually leads to a non-conceptual. When you have a conceptual feeling or experience, perception, understanding of emptiness, conceptual, then when you are coming into that negative situation, it does transform. You just need to say, and you just need to think emptiness and then bring up your experience of emptiness, best you can, whatever little bit or big that is, that immediately your habitual approach will stop. It's really phenomenal. And it's why they say the Dharma is the true refuge. And then you do it again and again, and it becomes a habit. And pretty soon you're more and more able to take on more and more difficult situations. Okay? Because you change the situation, difficult or not difficult, it's not difficult. It's neutral. Really, in a way, it's neutral, right? The difficulty is our relationship with that experience. I'm not suggesting that, there's not degrees of, a war, you know, but what makes the suffering is the mind for the most part. Now, of course, we have to realize we have compassion for where people are at. And if they're not, if you see a beggar on the road, give them food. If you're an emergency room doctor or nurse, and someone brings, brings someone into the emergency room, that's your job. And not only that, but you can talk about that emotionally too. If someone's going, in the emergency room of emotions, right? And then your job is to help them, stop the bleeding. Okay, it's not unless they're advanced, then you can maybe give some more advanced bandages like thought transformation, emptiness, those things. That would be best. So what happens in the mind pretty soon is automatically running toward that distortion. it's like something that we have a lot of attachment to, developing a habit around. Then we even see that thing on TV, right? And it stimulates our desire. And then also the next thing we know, we're in the kitchen, making a banana split or something because of our attachment to ice cream or whatever, right? Or it can be anything, drinking or whatever. So then what happens? The imprint gets stronger. You see what I'm saying? Gets stronger. Satisfying the habit is really that's what's meant by suffering, because we're just increasing our habit, which makes it harder to stop. Then you start obsessing, fantasizing. You have a problem, you start fantasizing about how, by the end of the week, you won't have any more ice cream left in your fridge, and maybe you should go now. But it is midnight, but Safeway is open at midnight, but you don't really need it for 4 or 5 more days. But you see, that's the obsession, and that becomes addiction. That's how addiction works. Okay, now if you take addiction, right, it's the object too. Okay, take addiction. We have the karmic imprint. I don't know if I told the story of my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law was, he was into drugs and all that. And then he really wanted to go to Asia. I think he was maybe going to come to Nepal. And because he had a very strong spiritual quality to him too. So he got to Thailand. He was Australian. He was Australian. Got to Thailand and getting ready to go. I think he was going to go to northern Thailand to go through the temples there, and then eventually come to Nepal to the meditation course. And he met up with some friends in Bangkok. And so they partied a bunch, and then he was going to leave the next day. And he said, "No, come on, just come stay tonight. We'll just party a little more." And they got into smoking heroin. And then because of that, due to that condition, the karmic imprint, he then became a heroin addict. Never made it to Nepal, northern Thailand, and for his life struggled with heroin addiction, and then eventually he was on methadone. So, but that imprint, maybe it wasn't so strong. Remember we talked about karma can magnify? That's an example. Maybe he didn't have strong karma, but the object, the object, powerful object, right? Heroin. Okay. The object, if it had been weed or something, maybe it wouldn't happen because that's a less powerful object. Okay. And then outside influences was the friends he was hanging around with in Thailand. Okay. Negative, they're telling him, just come on, you can go to Nepal next week, right? And anyway, this heroin's it doesn't hurt you. It's really pure. You know, this is what, this is fun, whatever. Okay. And I don't think he followed false teachings in that case, but it was bad information, whatever it was. And then the habit developed. Okay. And then the imprints were made over and over. The imprints getting stronger and stronger. Think about what the mind is that is into smoking heroin or, drinking alcohol. The mind, you think about how strongly it gets involved with that object. And so that is why the addiction happens so viciously, because the object is powerful too. And then we over exaggerate. And this is really interesting one. Lama Yeshe taught for a number of years a text called Uttanamshe. And the main theme of Uttanamshe is over exaggeration and underestimation. Those are how he used it. But you think about how we are with this. And the object is interesting. Now, it can be negative too, right? A person or something where you have extreme negative and you begin to develop a fear or a phobia about it. Okay. The memory comes and then there's judgment. That's bad, right? Or whatever your judgment is about it. Now, remember, it's just neutral, right? In a sense, it's really just neutral. But we become fascinated with the object. Let's take this mug. This mug, it's just this ember mug that stays heated for an hour and a half. And then it starts losing its power, by the way. Anyway, I start telling everybody they should get ember mugs because it'll be the solution to all their problems. Do you remember how many people saw Napoleon Dynamite? Only Jessica? Michael, did you? Yeah. Susan, did you see Napoleon Dynamite? It's the greatest movie of all time. How could you not seen it?
Multiple times.
Well, yeah, right. Christina?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Sheila? To my left. Sheil? I know Jessica saw it. Sheil, did you see
I
them?
have a gazillion times.
Huh?
I have a gazillion times.
Priscilla, you're right. Denise?
I've seen it a couple times.
Okay, so what was the solution to all problems? Do you remember? Anyone remember?
Make yourself a gosh dang quesadilla.
That was his for him. It was a vote for Pedro, right? Remember Pedro's campaign for high school president, and he said, "If you vote for me, I'll solve all your problems." Something like that. I often use that earlier years ago, and so I was teaching at one center, and they went out and printed a T-shirt. I think I still have it. It says "Vote for Pedro" on it. Right around the elections, and so I wore that a few times. Anyway, uh, over exaggeration. It's fantastic. I have a friend, a Dharma friend. It's just like everything. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to joke about this guy because he always had the best statues and the strongest connection with this teacher and just so much, and we do that with people, right? Friends and stuff, Like we meet a new friend and all of a sudden they can't do anything wrong. I really enjoy being with that, like that. Anyone or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever, and everything they do is, amazing, or a teacher, right? Right? And that's what Lama Yeshe called over exaggeration. And then as soon as something bad happens, it gets really ugly, right? Even if we over exaggerate a new car, like over exaggerate, electric cars coming out, and Teslas. What happens after a little time? Then it goes bad, right? You can't maintain that exaggeration. So those are the 6 conditions or 6 factors. And I just thought I find them interesting. I don't know if anyone else does, but any questions on any of that stuff or comments? No? Was that all old stuff for you? Familiar?
Karuna, could you give another example of product of mistaken conceptualizations, please?
Yeah, let me go back. Which one were we? What was that?
That was over exaggeration.
Oh, I see. Probably mistaken conceptualizations. Yeah. Well, it's kind of pretty easy because, you know, everything that we come in contact with is not existing inherently, right? And maybe I could, and then this is not the actual perfect example of non-inherent existence, but I use this one because it's easy for us to grasp, is the object is neutral in the sense that it's just um okay, for this basic level, it's nothing more than a combination of atoms and molecules, is it? Color and shape. In Tibetan or in Buddhist debate, not just debate, but in description of the definition of form, they talk about it being a sight, eyesight, not form, eyesight, visual objects. is that they are in the nature of shape and color. And that's how they define a visual object. If you think about that, then if you think about things you really like, or even a person you're attracted to, or a person you're angry at, there's no person there. Let's take an object, an inanimate object for a second. So, something you're really attracted to, maybe an article of clothing, or maybe it's this like this ember mug, right? So I imbue qualities to it or to them that don't exist. And those qualities are imbued through conceptualizing. It's actually a function of the mind, is that the mind conceptualizes. So when I think this cup is so great, and I'm going to buy, someone as a gift, and I tell them about it, right? And this, you're really going to love this cup, this mug. It just lasts for an hour. And I know you like, your tea hot in the morning, but like that. And it's really, really amazing mug. That's a conceptualization. Okay. And it's mistaken because it's not that. It's not a fantastic mug other than how I conceive of it as, isn't it? Does this make sense? You could take a person, same thing. Every person, uh, we project, we conceptualize how they are, even especially when they're not in front of us. So you think about Biden or Trump, if you want to get really, if you want to get really gross about it, it's that Biden is this, Trump is this, that those statements are when we look or think of Biden and Trump are nothing more than a concept, are they? It's in your head. It's in your head. It's nowhere else. Where is Biden's qualities other than in your head? And when you're watching the news and you see Biden's form there, your eye is coming into contact with shape and color. Of course, your ear is coming in contact with the newscaster's description, all that sort of thing, right? But forget the ear for a minute, because then that's how complex one perception is. Incredibly, incredibly profound. Just one moment of seeing Biden is an amazingly profound experience. Because Biden isn't even on the TV, is he? Is Biden on the TV? Is Trump on the TV? What's on the TV?
Light, I'm guessing.
What else? Yeah, light. Okay. Yeah.
Colors.
Yep. Pixels. Where's Biden? And yet, it takes only a moment or two, and sometimes no, you just see the person on the news, or you see the person's image, and you get, angry or you get attracted. Like people just see Biden and they get angry. People just see Trump and they get angry. People see Biden and they get attracted. Doing a great job. So I really hope he wins. Or you see Trump. Wow, we really need him in the White House to shake things up or whatever. It's all constant, but they're not even there. But we have a conversation in our heads as if they're there, don't we? Is that making sense? Is this making sense or not? Sheil, was it you who asked this?
I think this relates to the miserableness of traffic and where that lived, as we did in another class.
Exactly the same. It's all the same. Even right now, me looking at you looking at me, you hearing me hearing you. It's the same thing. I think you're right there. I think you're there. I think you are there as an independently existing entity. In fact, oh, I'm glad we can end on something like this. In fact, what is happening right now? I see on my screen, I see the different squares, people. So I'm seeing colors and shapes, right? Through my eye sense organ. And I hear voices through my ear organ, sense organ. I'm not actually feeling you tactilely. I'm not smelling anything with you, right? No taste, but I got the visual and the auditory. So that visual, I think looking at you guys, and you're out there, you're over there in your houses or wherever you are, right? And I'm here. Don't you see me as over here? Yeah. What are you seeing really? This is the nature of samsara. This is the whole point. We see things that aren't there and don't see what is there. What the thing we see that is not there is Karuna or you independently over there, existing. You are seen unless you realize emptiness. So excuse me if you have. You're seeing me as existing inherently, independently, over there. There's that guy. He's something. Okay? Got to get this point. This thing is months it takes, months, maybe years to get it. That what we're seeing is we are seeing independent existence, which is another way of saying inherent existence. It really exists that way. Another way of saying it really exists that way out there. Maybe that's another way. Independent means out there by itself. I'm looking at you, you're looking independent out there by yourselves. And you're looking at me the same way. But an experience of perception, just take perception for a moment. What really is happening is there's an object, like we talked about in those 6 things. There's an object. For you, it's my screen. And it's Michael's black shirt and Susan's brown coat and the cabinet behind her, and it's Jessica's white coat and the curtains behind her, and it looks like maybe she's on her bed with her headboard behind her. And Denise, it's a screen with white print, and Sheila with the big prayer wheels behind her and her tan pink sort of blouse, and then Christina's black with white. Okay? So if you're like me, when you're looking at the screen, you see all those people there, right? They're there. That means self-existent. Remember, the definition of reality is the way that things appear are the way they exist. The way you are appearing to me is not the way you exist. So I'm not seeing reality. Let me give you a simple, kind of a basic example. To have a perception, you need an eye or in this sight, okay? You need an eye organ. You need an object, which is all you guys for me. And you need a consciousness. Okay? So if you take an eye like, you know, okay, so Jessica's just, I'm not picking on you, but you did a lot of, I'm sure you dissected things, right? In your training. And let's say you dissected an eye, and you put it in a dish on a table, right?
Mhm.
And you held up, I don't know, red color. Would the eye see the red?
No,
Why?
because it's not attached to the brain.
Right. So you need a brain or consciousness. Okay. I mean, the consciousness to function in a human being needs a brain for the most part. But anyway, so mind, brain, we won't talk about that. You need the object, red, or in this case, the screen in front of you. You need your eye organ, but just those two alone doesn't make sight. It's very important. Those two alone do not make sight. You have to have a consciousness, an experiencer, an experiencer. Consciousness and experiencer are the same thing. You know, sometimes when I teach the subject, I might just use the word experience or experiencer. The experiencer of all experience, you know, every instant we're experiencing is the consciousness. It's not the I. Now, if you're blind and there's the screen here and the consciousness, you also don't see anything, do you? Because you don't have the organ. And if you have the organ and the consciousness, but no screen, no object, you don't see it then either, do you? So there's this interdependency that's going on, and it's happening instantly. Not instantly. It's not exactly instantly. So the color, when I look at Michael's picture, he has, you know, his background of what is your background? It's a tree of life? What is it?
It's a Bodhi tree.
Bodhi tree. Okay. When I see the Bodhi tree, okay, so where am I seeing the yellow? Am I seeing the yellow in the background? Am I seeing the yellow in my eye organ? Am I seeing the yellow in my brain consciousness? I'm actually asking all of you.
Well, I'm laughing because I thought the picture was orange.
Okay, orange. So I mean, I'm a color, but it is kind of orange, but
So am I. That's why I'm laughing.
oh. Well, if it was yellow from its side, everyone would see it as yellow, right?
Right.
But it doesn't exist from its side. I'm, in fact, in fact, um, my understanding, okay, I'm going to ask Jessica again, but she may not know the answer to this. This is physics. I heard once that all colors made in the mind. Is that right? That there's no color in things? Have you ever heard that?
Go ahead, Michael. Yeah, I've heard that. Yes.
Yeah, which is fantastic. I mean, you know, I mean, it
I mean,
just gets more,
color is just a wavelength, right?
right.
Yes.
And so are radio waves and everything else, right?
Yeah.
So
And
the
as they're just
brain,
kind of zooming through, when they hit my skin, I don't experience color.
right.
When they hit my
But
hair, I don't experience color. It's not till they bounce off of something or coming from something.
so where's the color orange?
It's in my mind.
Ah, now I want you to be completely honest. You answered correctly. Is that how you experience orange, though? You
No, I
experience it,
experience orange on that picture behind me.
right? So we believe it's in the object.
Right.
So right there, just one tiny simple example is how we don't see reality. And that's only with the color orange in this moment right now. What about how I feel about, you know, Trump and how I feel about Biden and how I feel about my spiritual practice and how I feel about teaching and how I feel about, you know, someone criticizing me and how I feel about getting old and dying. How do I feel about, you know, having a grandson? How do I feel about meeting a client? How do I feel about, we believe it's all there. It's real. And none of it's there. Now, I don't want you leaving with the misconception that it's all in your mind either. So remember I mentioned there's 4 philosophical schools, and on the job of the philosophical schools is how to define reality. That's what their job is. Like, how does the soul or self exist? How does the world exist? How does a plant exist? Okay. And third highest one, the Chitta School, does say it's all in your mind. So don't dismiss the fact that it's not that we that it's that's not true. Don't dismiss that because that's a very, 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 very profound realization. And as we develop our view of reality, we'll start at lower level and move up, and we'll be in a place where wow, everything is mind. It's not wrong. It's just not the final way of articulating. The final way is everything exists as being merely imputed by the mind. So things are interdependent. So you can't have yellow without the yellow there. You can't have yellow without the eye, and you can't have yellow without the mind. If it was all mind, then I could have that yellow without the object. And that's where the mind only school breaks down a bit. But it's very profound. And it's very, 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 very hard to prove that that yellow and all of you that I'm seeing are not in my mind. It's, so I want to make sure I don't leave it as something simple. It's very hard to prove that it's not all in my mind. Because where's the experience? The entire experience we're having is in the mind, isn't it? So maybe it all is in the mind. So I'm going to leave you with that. Maybe it makes a good segue to if we meet again. Um, we will meet again because the imprints are there. Um, any questions? Okay.
Karuna, I just want to say it seems really reasonable to me to say, yes, we need all three. It's not all in the mind. That makes sense. That makes sense to me. I don't believe it's all in the mind.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, Susan, is if when we meditate on this, it's very, very hard to find how it exists out there. Okay. And I'm not saying it doesn't, but how it does is the view of the highest school of Buddhist philosophy. When we meditate, you can really, really, as you get quieter and quieter, you can see that it seems everything is in the mind because all experience is in the mind. So it's very hard. Well, how do things exist outside of it? There's a big philosophical debate, and the reason it's so big is because it's so subtle. Okay, and the reason it's so big is because when we meditate, as we meditate and become deeper in our experience, you will experience and you'll go, wow, everything is mind. You will get that. You will have that experience. But because you also have the experience of the highest school's teachings, they don't just, the funny thing is, if you look closely, they don't actually say it's not all the mind. What they do say is all merely imputed by the mind. And, that subtlety is very, very subtle. But it exists for that exact reason, because it's not quite the final view that everything is mind. But when they say it's merely imputed by mind, they're not removing that, are they? They're not removing the mind part. Any other questions? Did Quentin have a question, Jessica?
Yeah, he wanted chocolate.
Oh, that's a good question. And you asked him where the chocolate really existed, right?
Right, yeah.
And you laughed. Okay, everybody. Anything else? Okay. Okay, thank you. We'll just I think we did good. Did we do well or did we do good? I think we did well. Um, yeah. So we will meet again. And for this moment, that all the countless imprints we created together, they are in the mind, they are in the consciousness. They will be carried to the next life. They will ripen. It's amazing. They will ripen. And maybe this lifetime too, when you'll be experiencing a rainfall of wisdom and perception. You will. It will happen. It absolutely will happen. And you'll go, wow, how did I do this? How did that happen? You created it. That's how. Just be patient. It may be messed up right now. Our lives may not be so good. It's not permanent. It's not eternal. Just keep dedicating these imprints and they will take over. Can't say when, but it will end. Our struggles will end, or our enlightened qualities, both our body and our speech and mind, will become like light. It will happen. It'll happen. So what you want to achieve in the future, spend a moment dedicating this time and these merits, these imprints to that. Okay, so just you make up your own future for a moment. Okay. And also for those who have a connection with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, then also dedicate the merits that his swift return, but it's not just his swift return, but also that we have the merit that he manifests as a great teacher like he did last lifetime. There's no guarantee that will happen. It depends on our merit. We may have used it up for all I know. Probably not. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Stay in touch. Thank you.